Be expensive. This is a Walmart generic brand. You can buy it for $1. This is black. I also have white. Those are the two primary colors that you work with when you work in miniature. If you want to have a lighter colored miniature, you want to work in whites. That would be things like light blues, light reds, yellows. Those colors you want to work with a white base. If you want to have a darker texture, as you can see in that one, or you want to get into the grooves where there's a lot of detail you want highlighted, that's darker, you want to go with a darker color like a black. Neutral colors, if you don't have an idea where you want to go, I would use a gray. Once you have the miniature primed, it takes about, once you prime it, when you go over it, you want to go over it with light, strokes on your priming. The reason you want to do that is if you have a heavy coat, it's gritty, you lose a lot of the detail. But if you go with light coats, it's a lot easier on the miniature because it retains a lot of the detail. And you want to give it a good day or two to dry up before you get done. When you get done with the priming, you want to move on to the base coat. The base coat is basically the very first coat you put down. Consider it like a foundation, your primary color. So if you have an idea what you have on your paint scheme, such as in these miniatures, you can see that this was primed white, but they put the major colors of red on there. And this one you have the kind of the brown tan, which is the major color. These guys over here, they've been basically just touched up on the face because it looks like they're going to be going with a darker paint scheme on there. Base coats are important because they lay the foundation for the next point, which is adding more detail. There's a couple of methods you can use on this. Blending, dry brushing, and highlighting are all important things you can do with detail. If you can see here, there are a couple of examples of different types of highlighting. Particularly on this armor, if you saw how the dark primer is visible on the armor ridges there, the reason that you can see that is not because I took a little pen and drew it, it's because I used a technique called dry brushing, which involves a very particular type of brush you can purchase in a hobby store. The method is you dry it out as much as possible with just a little bit of paint on it, and you go over the surface area, and because it's so dry and the type of brush it is, it'll skip the recesses and just leave the recesses the primary color it's underneath. That's why you can see all the detail there. Blending is another technique that involves a amount of color, usually a darker color with a lighter color. In other words, you're going to be using color theory. And you just drag your brush across and it gives you a particular blending technique. It's not used very often on most miniatures except for in very complex. It's a very advanced thing. Glazing is another process. If you look at this miniature here, if you look at the face in particular, they had a base coat on the face. Ink washes can be achieved with regular acrylics. You just want to water it down to about a 10-to-1 ratio, and you just go over it. And this is kind of a reverse of dry brushing. Dry brushing, you want to avoid the recesses. Ink washes go into the recesses. You put it on there, you let it dry, it gets into the crevices, and it gives you that enhanced look. It brings out the detail, as you can see on the face here, whereas before you couldn't see the detail on the face. It's a very easy way of getting detail, and since you already have the paints to begin with, it's easy to do the ink washes. Highlighting. Highlighting is actually one of the last things you want to do. When you do the detail, as you can see on this miniature, it's kind of difficult to see maybe from a distance, but large screen you can probably see a little bit better than normal. If you look on the shoulder pad, if you notice there's a darker area than a lighter area, highlighting goes across the ridges. It's basically you take the smallest brush you have and just highlight the ridges of the area, kind of like if the sun is shining on it, it's kind of glinting off. It kind of gives a three-dimensional look to it instead of just being flat. It's a very nice technique. It takes a little bit more time, but it does give a little bit better look to the miniature. There are some more examples of some highlighting. That miniature, you can see some more details. You can see the guy has painted eyes on there. Some other details after the ink wash. Some very nice ones. Earlier we saw the dark brown on that base coated. Once you get done with painting your miniature, it's very important that you want to seal it. Sealing actually protects it from oils in your skin. All human beings have oil in their skin, and oil in there actually is mildly acidic. So when you handle an acrylic or oil-based paint, it will actually rub off eventually. So if you handle something quite a bit, you want to protect it by sealing it. It also gives an extra level of protection, so if you drop it or scratch it, it may just take off the coating and not the paint itself. There are some examples of some painted things. This individual took some miniatures and took a stopwatch and actually integrated it into it. There's just some other examples of what you can do with it. This individual took a sculpture of an angel and painted it. The final finished product of the one that we had there. And if we have some time, we'll actually brought the materials. You guys can paint your own and try your hand at it if you want. Thanks for sitting through it.
They say you look 10 pounds heavier.
Just a last minute adjustment to show the crowd that was here.
We really enjoy